With the start of a new melody, a spark ignites in the hazy instinctive consciousness of a little theropod dinosaur's mind. He knows it is time to hatch. He has heard many songs in his 6-month incubation. Mother and father both sing with the rise of... Almost a year ago, Connor came to me with a proposition. A documentary-style episode following the life of an uktan. I think our original discussion was a day in the life, but it pretty quickly expanded, and I'm really thankful he was on board to sponsor what eventually became a 2-hour episode I published at the very end of 2023. As a kid, a vast majority of what I watched were wildlife documentaries. As an avid lover of all things dinosaur, the Walking With series was pretty formative. Some of my favorite books were grounded xenofiction, or stories told from the perspectives of animals, such as Baby Whale Sharp Ears by John Beattie and Raptor Red by Robert Bacher. In my second anthology, one of my favorite stories to write was Tempered in Ashen Blood, a story that followed the aftermath of a coastal volcano and told from the perspective of a killer whale. I considered making Ballad of Ka'Hai proper xenofiction, really getting into the animal's head. I wrote a few sequences with that in mind, but they didn't quite land. I decided to take a more omniscient narrative approach instead. Uktan are intelligent, but not nearly as smart as a killer whale, so a traditional documentary-style narration fit the story much better. The Ballad of Big Al, a short documentary in the Walking With series by Impossible Pictures, follows the life of an individual Allosaurus, and was a similar format to what I felt worked best. Since I was already making a bit of a tribute to the piece, which I watched several times as a kid, I decided to adopt the title format, and thus, Ballad of Ka'Hai was born. Uktan have been part of Kaimere for most of the project's history. Kaimere began as a single island in the Bermuda Triangle when I was 12 years old, almost 20 years ago. After a couple years, I added more land masses and cultures, and one of the first things I added once I developed the crescent was to establish that there was a massive species of Allosaurus dominating the prairies of the Imperial Territories. I couldn't find its first illustration, but it was blatantly derivative of a Carcharodontosaurus toy I had, with much longer arms. It pretty quickly became a quadruped, though I changed this aspect of the design once Jurassic World came out, as I wanted to make something more unique and didn't want to be accused of plagiarizing. In hindsight, I'm quite glad I steered away from a quadrupedal model, as theropod forearms and bodies would require a lot of novel and frankly detrimental changes to become quadrupeds. The uktan has changed quite a lot in the 18 or so years since it was first conceptualized, but at its core, the concept is almost as old as the project itself. Because of this, it felt like a great species to begin what I hope will be many episodes of this series, exploring the setting from the perspective of its inhabitants. As those of you who have already seen Ballad of Ka'Hai can attest, a lot of new artwork was needed for this episode. A lot of our December was spent with me sketching scenes while my girlfriend and I watched Christmas movies. Writing the script also took a tremendous amount of time. A lot of scenes had to be cut for the sake of getting it out in time and making sure there was enough time for art. If I ever publish this as a book, I will likely include some of those scenes. They may not have been important for the narrative, but it did help flesh out the extent of the Hausi Prairie ecosystem, so it would be nice to work some of them back in through a different medium. A few didn't really move the plot along, like the Mototan sequence. I could argue that it helped put a face to the wonder and terror of the prairie now that our heroes have finally left the nest, but at the end of the day I had a lot of fun writing the sequence, and I'll be damned if Shiny Gander's coloration of this sketch didn't seal the deal. In its first conception, I had a greater narrative focus with slightly characterized antagonists, a revenge plot, and other aspects that I decided to cut for the sake of making it feel more grounded. I am happy with this tonal shift. It does bring me to a xenofiction piece I started around 10 years ago that was the story of following the life of a T-Rex whose parents were killed by a Triceratops, was raised by a Quetzalcoatlus, and returned north to the territory of its childhood as an adult to vanquish the ceratopsian villain and reclaim his parents' territory. Even if that's how Ballad of Ka'Hai began, I'm honestly more satisfied with how it ended. A narrative like that may be more engaging in some aspects, but I preferred the more grounded tone, at least for this one. The hyenas, terror birds, and pair of uktan who tried to oust Ka'Hai's parents may have been antagonists, but none of them are villains. They're just animals trying to survive in a harsh, unforgiving world. Naturally, I still kept some of the narrative elements. The Kelatar, for example, shows up 3 times, first to establish how difficult they are to bring down. This was inspired by predators like big cats taking on such game as buffalo and gorillas. While it's true that leopards can reliably bring down a gorilla more than twice their size, it must be said that not all leopards do this. It's not every leopard killing an occasional gorilla, but a few large leopard toms becoming very good at bringing down these apes. Same goes for the lion that killed buffalo. Lion prides that aren't specialized experience high mortality from this dangerous game, but for those few that excel at the task, buffalo can make up a bulk of their diet. Kelatar are a lot smaller than uktan, but their shell, coupled with powerful claws and a studded tail, makes for impressive defenses, and a haphazard attack can easily result in broken fingers. Uktan kill with their talons. Losing a claw or hand in a single hunt is obviously a serious handicap. Establishing that Ka'Hai's parents can endure harsh seasons by knowing how to reliably bring down game most predators and even other uktan cannot felt like an important point. The second encounter with a Kelatar, however, showed that even these individuals specialized for the dangerous game don't win every encounter. Buffalo hunting lions often have scars from their engagements. Druk has killed many Kelatar, but when he strikes in desperation and gets injured, he only makes matters worse in a rage. True, he made the kill, but the reckless attack ends up being his undoing. In the third and final Kelatar engagement, Ka'Hai uses his knowledge passed down from his parents to provide food for himself and his mate, securing their relationship through the harsh dry season. In Ballad of Big Al, a toe injury during the hunt is presented as leading to an infection and ultimately starvation. While I didn't shy away from the harsh realities of uktan life on the prairie, at the end of the day, I'm an author who likes hard journeys and happy endings. Not all of my short stories end in a cheerful note, of course, but that's my preference as a storyteller, and it certainly influenced where I took Ballad of Ka'Hai. Also, this meant to show a relatively normal life. Sure, not all uktan specialize in Kelatar, of course, but most families specialize in something. Having Ka'Hai be from parents' 5th year of the nest allowed me to show a full range of uktan growth, with some older and some younger siblings. Some uktan leave after the first few years of protection, especially later hatchings, but for the first few years they often stay a lot longer. Ka'Hai and Kian leaving at 8 years old is average, but the format of this story enabled me to show that animals often have a quite deal of individual variation. Some leave at 3 years old, others at 12. Not all uktan go through their dating years hunting buffalo, but that sequence also allowed me to showcase a diversity of mating rituals. Sometimes uktan partner up only for a season, others form loose coalitions, and a few find their life partner during a wide range of years. Some bond in their early teens. Others, like Oniya, wait until their skeletal maturity to settle down, and others still never bond in adolescence and must try to find a mate as an adult. There's plenty more I could say about this story and working on it. It was a delightful process from start to finish. My only complaint was, I wish I had more time. Speaking of which, I have to get back to work on videos for the next couple weeks. I posted a newsletter on my Patreon a few days ago, and if you want to know more about what's going on behind the scenes, definitely check that out. You don't need to be a paying patron to see it, but of course I'm very grateful if you are able to join even at one of the lower tiers. It goes a long way in making all of this possible. Thank you so much to my Patreon patrons. Without my sponsors, YouTube ad revenue, and Patreon, I certainly couldn't afford to make Kaimere my full-time career, and I'm deeply grateful for your support. Happy Lunar New Year. Welcome to the Year of the Dragon. See you all on Tuesday, and thanks again for watching. Cheers, folks!